HAARP again. Now, HAARP, I want to go into what HAARP does in a few other scenarios. So that's another picture of HAARP. It's a very ominous and very, very dangerous installation. It's literally ripping holes in the atmosphere. Here you have a HAARP signal. That's why I showed that image again. Now, that big, bright area over the eastern US, guess what that is? Arctic vortex. The big headlines that we're all forced to believe that if you walked out the door, you would immediately turn into a popsicle. So, yes, there was cold temperatures, very cold, but for how long? And how historically unusual was this, and was it natural? And when you see the jet stream configuration, and you see these HAARP signals that manipulate that jet stream, there's nothing natural about it, nothing. It was designed to create some headlines. They made the most of it. Anybody here who watches Weather Channel, it's absolutely astounding. It's like watching a cast of clowns who clearly have marching orders to paint the most frigid picture on planet Earth they can possibly paint. They don't talk about the fact that days earlier, for this big cool down in the Arctic, New York shattered its all-time record high by 10 degrees, 73 degrees in New York in January. Then it plunges down to the single digits, and then a few days later it's back up to 60 degrees in rain. So these fluctuations, again, back to the term climate change that I went over before, that's why they coined that term, so people would not question these massive changes as being unnatural. Why are thousands of dead birds suddenly falling from the sky? Well, when you blast the sky with massive radio frequency signals, it tends to cause some problems. And what people don't realize, I'm sure many of you have heard the birds falling out of the sky several years ago, happened again this January. What you don't know about several years ago, it happened in 34 places around the globe. Former Bush aide John Wheeler was seen outside the Pentagon threatening to, according to witnesses, blow the whistle on these programs. He was found in a landfill 2 days later. So this is certainly the big league, and if these programs were really brought to light, it would change the complexion of what we face. Geoengineered snowstorms wreaking havoc around the globe. This is very important to remember. There is no natural weather at this point. Even small-scale geoengineering programs would have the potential to disrupt the entire system, but in fact, we're seeing global programs. So the whole system has been rendered completely unnatural. If you look closely here, you see the massive spraying trails off the coast of California, this sort of aerosolization, which can start to set up for some of these engineered events. Mount Shasta snow holds 1,200 times normal levels of aluminum due to chemtrails, geoengineering. Many of you here that are local know that. We had lab tests off the side of Mount Shasta that measured 61,000 parts per billion. Now, you'll have a lot of people from the disinformation sites say it's normal. Aluminum's in the soil, it's 8% of the Earth's crust, third most abundant element. It's normal for it to be blowing around and everything. That's absolutely false. Aluminum does not exist in the environment in free form. It is always bonded to other elements. It doesn't blow around in the snow and the rain unless it's been mined and refined and sprayed. So it should not be in our snow, and it absolutely should not be in our rain, but it is. It's also the primary ingredients in geoengineering patents, aluminum oxide. So this should be no surprise. Ice storm, unprecedented interior Alaska meteorologists say, this is only one example, but if any of you watch weather very closely, you'll see ice storms are now normal. Now this parade of winter storms that we have, almost on a conveyor, there's almost always a boundary of ice storm between the rain and the snow. And now the Weather Channel meteorologists are trying to tell us that it's normal to have a warm side and a cold side to a winter storm. Since when? One side is tornadoes and thunderstorms. You throw a rock, you're in snow. There's nothing natural about this, absolutely nothing. So the ice storms now are the boundaries between where they're trying to nucleate, and we can see the aerosol programs going on radar, where they have not cooled the air down enough for this to crystallize while it's falling. It hits the ground before it sets up. So now you have ice forming on everything, and you have ice storms now as the boundary layer between rain and snow as they're trying to nucleate these artificially engineered storms. Very theatrical names. Weather Channel now, this is part of the theater. This is part of, they've changed direction. Now they want to convince us of this horrible cold when it's anything but overall. Yes, they focus on a few areas. They hammer those areas again and again. They'll create a few snowstorms in the same place over and over while the rest of the world is going to meltdown. So this is their theatrical storm names here. Very unprecedented jet stream movements. You see configurations like that historically, completely unnatural. It's how they push and pull air masses around. Now, this is typical of what we see in this parade of winter snowstorms in the east. Very high pressure in the west pushes the jet stream up and over us. We bake and dry out. They'll push some cold air down. They'll pump air up from the Gulf, combine the two. You'll have an ice storm layer in between, and you'll have snowflakes on the top. And this is important to understand with ice nucleation. We have patents for this. We're not guessing, we're not making this up. NASA even has a patent, artificial ice nucleation for weather modification. Ice nucleation is a very, very interesting science. It's called an endothermic reaction. When you mix, for example, barium hydroxide, we know we have barium in the mix. Barium hydroxide and ammonium can drop temperatures horrendously, up to 100 degrees in a lab beaker. What they can do with chemical nucleation is absolutely astounding, and we know these materials are in the frozen precipitation that comes down. Another unnatural jet stream, again, this is how they create these artificial snowstorms. These are unnatural configurations, but part of the way they do this, again, if they allow the moisture to flow across us, across the Pacific, that's warmer moisture. It inhibits them from doing what they're apparently trying to do back east. I'm not saying this is the only goal for these programs, but it appears to be one. This is a great example of a nucleated snowstorm. I don't know how many of you heard of this. 100,000 cattle feared dead after early South Dakota snowstorm. October 4th, last year, up to 100,000 cattle died. How did that happen? When we had temperatures that were in the 40s. How do cattle from South Dakota die with temperatures in the 40s? When you have an endothermic reaction like I just described, how do you have snow at 56 degrees? This is right off the AccuWeather site. Did the laws of physics change? No, they haven't. It's just geoengineering and weather modifications. So if you have 4 feet of snow in early October at 45 degrees, that's not going to kill cattle. But if those cattle are encased in this snow and there's an endothermic reaction and the temperature on their hide might be 20 below, that'll sure as hell kill them. So we have an event that the media almost tried to sweep under the rug. There wasn't much coverage about this. What about the weird ice boulders that wash up in Lake Michigan? This just happened for the 3rd time in as many years. This is historically unprecedented. 75-pound ice boulders floating all over the lake. How does that happen? It happens from artificial ice nucleation again. As that chemical reaction forms a nucleus, it tends to keep freezing all the way around it. So you end up with this, and the Weather Channel will explain this away. They come up with terms that try to make the unnatural seem natural. So this is a phenomenon that we've just seen again a few days ago. This is an important map because this is the map for the snowstorm I just described in South Dakota that killed 100,000 cattle. Take a good look at that map. You can't find a map like this now because I think things like this were so glaring that they try to keep this from happening. Weather Channel's changed all their graphics so they don't have maps like this. How can 100,000 cattle die in South Dakota when you have temperatures of Chicago, 85 degrees? You had, this is from the same time, you had 89 in Kansas City. How can you possibly have an event like that? How is that possible? And it shows snow right there at 44 degrees, snow at 36 degrees. They don't put these maps out now because it's pretty damn obvious and they know people are looking. Again, this is back to California, back to you and I and our families. This is about as unnatural a map as you could have. California looks like a target because it appears that it may in fact be. 3 possible scenarios here. California's a climate sacrifice zone, which means for whatever they're trying to do back east, we simply are thrown under the bus. That's one scenario. 2, California's a target, perhaps bringing the agriculture to its knees, taking water rights. There's a lot of possible angles there, right? There certainly is. They're pretty obvious. 3, and probably the most likely scenario, is both of those scenarios. So we see something that's completely unnatural, frying in the west from a high-pressure dome, while the rest of the country is cooler. Same thing. Now this is the map for our period right now. This map covers till the 23rd. I've never seen a map like this. 30 years of looking at meteorology, I've never seen anything like this. How can you have half the country virtually frying and the other half below? How is that possible? It's not possible based on historical natural weather patterns. This should alarm people. That's 6 tiers above normal. That indicates temperatures over half the country that are 15, 20 degrees above normal. You don't hear the media talking about this much. That's a NOAA map. Now, back to the rainfall. How does that happen? Most of the country you see with above normal rainfall, another big bullseye right on California of no rain. The colors over California, that shading means increasing degrees of no rain. So here we have again, California looks like a target. Well, even Alaska has excessive rain. The rest of the country has rain. Nothing for us. Aerosolization off the coast of California. Anybody who thinks that's natural, again, needs to get therapy. I mean, that's about as unnatural as it could be, and we see this, I mean, almost constantly. Aerosolization off the coast. And this Disrupts the hydrological cycle. It disrupts the rain cycle, period. This illustrates again what I'm talking about. Massive high pressure, they pump the moisture completely up into the Arctic Circle where they cool it down and push it back down and cool parts of the country while other parts fry. Again, California, at minimum, a climate sacrifice zone for the experiments they're carrying on further east. New release concern is IPCC bangs the drum for geoengineering. If these guys don't know this is going on right now, they absolutely don't deserve to be called scientists. And for them to try to paint the picture that geoengineering is going to save us when after 60 years we know that it's literally pounding the nails into our collective coffins is absolutely ridiculous. This is interesting as well. Carnegie Science Global Ecology. What this is, Caldera Lab Research. Ken Caldera, one of the world's most recognized geoengineers. What a surprise. He's planning on making some money off of geoengineering. So he puts out a report paid for from Carnegie Science, which is paid for by federal money, that says geoengineering would grow more crops. Anybody in here growing more crops with geoengineering? Are your gardens doing well? We can't grow a thing. In fact, I've reverted to growing cactus because that's about all it grows right now. So here you have, again, those within the system trying to put out studies that are absolute nonsense, but they're trying to capitalize off the system. This is important too. Naomi Klein, not her, but the article. Big green groups are more damaging than climate deniers. Where are the environmentalists? Where are they? I've never been so completely disgusted at people who are part of groups. I've met with the head of Sierra Club in this region. I've passed on so much data that's gone apparently in the round file. I've met with other environmental group leaders. Where are these people? Who's funding them and why do they ignore this issue? Because everything else they're doing is a moot point compared to geoengineering. It's a moot point. None of it will matter. So where are they? I can only hope and pray that they find an ounce of honor and courage soon because the ship's going down. Here we have climate scientists, right? Is this what they look like, you know? It's about what you have, you know? It would be more comical if it wasn't so incredibly tragic, you know? This is about what we have. Well, this kind of stuff's going on in our skies and people somehow convincing themselves it's normal. Now, this is important. We're not switching to cartoon hour, but this is a kid's illustrated film. Look closely. See the trail? This is how you condition kids to think it's all okie doke. Just put it in the cartoons and they'll think it's all normal. How insidious can this stuff be? There we go. You see the trail up top? One down low. Another one, background, two. This is about as low as it gets for society, as far as I'm concerned. Now, how about this? NASA cloud chart for school children. NASA actually has a program now to teach kids that what we see in the sky is benign for them. So this is what NASA does now. This is what people that work for the government do. We're trying to expose these people. We're trying to put their names out there, their emails out there, because it's not okay. It's not okay because it's your job to engage in something that hideous. Should we teach them it's okay to chew glass or something else? I mean, what do we teach our kids, you know? And how can people engage in programs like this as if it's okay? It's certainly not. And this is what we face. I mean, it breaks my heart to think about the amount of kids now that are on inhalers. They can't breathe, they can't play, they can't do sports. And what about the buildup? It's not like it's just a temporary inconvenience. This stuff is building up in their systems, especially with children. Their systems are very weak. And they can't take this kind of daily onslaught.